Truth News. It is December 23rd, 2023. Thank you very much, Professor Jim Fetzer, for coming on the show. Please download us all. What is going on? What's happening? Happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everybody. Let's hear it.
Well, both of the wars are working out very differently than intended. Ukraine is so short on munitions, including artillery shells, that it's having to replan its military operations. This is extremely important. The shortages are seen across the entire front line and is, to put it mildly, a very big problem. A replanning task set for themselves, making them smaller in order to support them. But basically, it's a lost cause. The White House has said it had funded for one more weapon shipment to Ukraine, but Congress, indeed the House, very cleverly has tied further funding for Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan to border security. Zelensky would like to have 500,000 more soldiers to join the fight, but no one wants to join. I mean, the situation is absurd. They've been recruiting children and elderly to put them on the front lines with minimal training where they're ground up and killed forthwith. Both sides treat their casualty numbers as secrets, but officials estimate hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have been killed and wounded. Ukraine's troop numbers aren't known, but said in the past it has around 1 million under arms. Zelensky said that his military is proposing mobilizing 450 to 500,000 more, but where are they going to come from? Colonel McGregor has observed that the best estimates available to him, and he's as good as they get, Ukraine has already lost 500,000 soldiers. Perhaps that's the source of the number. They need to replace all of those who are dead, which is 10 times worse than World War I, meaning this war is done. And again, I have to congratulate House Speaker Mike Johnson for declaring that they're not going to unlock the 111 billion spending package until something is done about border security. Absolutely sensational move. There are lots of reports about now, if we contemplate what Putin is going to do with Ukraine, now that he has won the war, even though it has yet to be formalized, he's had a plan for partitioning Ukraine, which was an artificial construct derived from World War II. As Putin's invasion escalates, many are asking what he hopes to achieve. During a phone conversation with President Macron, this would have been over a year ago, he made clear he's committed to taking full control of Ukraine and neutralizing the country. I think that the picture emerging is the complete military conquest of Ukraine, followed by a partition. I don't believe there's going to be a massive purge, so the propagandists would like to suggest as much. That's more a Zionist mode of operation, just as after the Bolshevik Revolution, they executed millions of citizens merely because they were suspected of being politically on the wrong side. Putin is not going to follow their example, even though that does appear to be taking place in Gaza today. It appears that Putin is working toward ending the process of disintegration that began in 1991 with the dissolution of the Soviet Union, where he was actually forced into entering Ukraine because after the so-called color revolution of 2014, which Victoria Nuland, Under Secretary of State, orchestrated with $5 billion in American taxpayer money to overthrow the democratically elected president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, and install a Western puppet of whom Zelensky is a successor. Non-stop shelling of the Donbass began, including Donetsk and Luhansk, where there are many ethnic Russians, Russian speakers friendly to Russians, and indeed Kiev was planning an all-out assault on the Donbass, of which Putin became aware and intervened to preclude it happening. As additional motives, of course, Ukraine was wanting to join NATO, which Russia had long since made clear was unacceptable. And moreover, the labs, biolabs, some of whom were working on producing genetically Russian-specific bioweapons, had to be brought to an end. It now appears that Putin may partition Ukraine, give parts to Poland, parts to Romania, parts to Belarus, and might possibly even reinstate Yanukovych, who was a good man. Meanwhile, Scott Ritter has reported that in Gaza, the war has not gone well for Israel. As a consequence, they're undertaking drastic measures. They're pumping seawater into the Gaza tunnels despite warning from Russia about war crimes. But the Israelis have been committing one war crime after another, genocide, obviously being the greatest offense a nation is capable of committing under international law. But the Israelis do not care. They are responding to what they regard as higher law. They are responding to what they take to be God's law, based upon the Torah, the Talmud, and the rabbinical tradition, according to which the Jews are the chosen people, Palestine is the promised land, and all other nations exist only to be subservient to the Jewish rule of the world out of Jerusalem as the headquarters, where this truly is the culmination of the New World Order. The Rothschilds, of course, are the most wealthy and powerful family in the world with their international banking empire, and they've been all in on this project. The defeat in Ukraine, I submit, where they intended to create a new Israel, given especially that most of the present-day occupants of Israel today are Ashkenazi Jews, descended from the region today, modern-day Ukraine. They wanted that land, and I believe now, having been denied by Russia, they're undertaking a full-blown, absolutely thorough ethnic cleansing. They want to kill or remove every single Palestinian from the lands of Palestine, for which they have a claim running as much as 3,000 years into the past. The Israelis have been there for 75, but they've continued to encroach and encroach and encroach. Indeed, they have acted in violation of their conditional admission to the United Nations, which I believe is going to lead to their expulsion from the UN. The entire world is condemning them. They were only admitted on the condition they be respectful of Palestinian rights, and the Palestinian had the right to return, that the Palestinian people would be compensated for any taking of property or destruction to buildings perpetrated by the Israelis, which they have manifestly violated again and again in as gross an effort as possible. The flooding of the tunnels, of course, with seawater is going to contaminate the freshwater wells in Gaza, make the region uninhabitable for hundreds of years. It is apparent to me they just don't care. They're going to level Gaza. What's taking place from their point of view is an urban renewal project. They want to claim gas and oil worth billions offshore of Gaza that properly belongs to the Palestinian people, but where they have already illegally leased out the right for exploration to some 6 international oil concerns. And they want to build a Ben Gurion tunnel through the middle of Gaza. Human Rights Watch has observed, obviously accurately, Israel is using starvation as a weapon of war. Already on the 8th of October, they imposed a siege on Gaza, not allowing food or water or fuel or electricity. Absolutely outrageous. We must all remember the rule of threes. Human beings can live for 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. We're now October, November, December. We're well over 2 months. Meanwhile, it's remarkable that The Guardian in the UK has published that Israel has lost the war. But Netanyahu and his radical cabinet do not want to admit it. This would be consistent with Colonel McGregor's observation by performing the destruction of all of those buildings in Gaza. They were benefiting Hamas militarily because then Israeli tracked vehicles would have great difficulty navigating amidst the rubble. It would create secure firing positions for Hamas. And indeed, they have taken out around 150 Israeli tanks and armored personnel carriers using rocket-propelled grenade launchers, specially modified to be effective against the Israeli equipment. Meanwhile, investigative journalists have debunked the atrocity and rape stories being promoted by Israel as a justification for the vicious onslaught. Max Blumenthal has researched atrocity stories, including dead Jewish babies dangling from laundry lines in a kibbutz, beheaded babies, Hamas fighters cutting fetuses out of pregnant women's bodies, severing a little girl's arm, baking a baby in an oven. He found no death records, photos, first-hand testimony, independent witnesses, or other evidence to corroborate those stories, which appear to be fabricated out of whole cloth. Israel even claimed Hamas not only raped Israeli women on October 7th, but has continued to abuse female hostages ever since. They have, however, been unable to produce a single first-hand testimony or video proving allegation of mass rapes, and the hostages who have been released have complimented Hamas for treating them very kindly, very gently, in a very appropriate fashion. The most inflammatory allegations have emerged from the ultra-Orthodox volunteer organization Zaka and its rival United Hatzalah to raise millions from wealthy Jewish donors abroad. An investigation by Haaretz, a prominent Israeli newspaper, already in 2016, explained that Zaka and the United Hatzalah have engaged in an intensive battle for publicity and the money that follows. Founded by a serial rapist known as the Haredi Jeffrey Epstein ultra-Orthodox rescue group, Zaka is responsible for some of the most obscene post-October 7th atrocity fabrications, from beheading babies to mass rape to the fetus cut out of its mother. Simply outrageous. But Blumenthal's been doing a great job of debunking all of these stories, suggesting they're nothing but pure propaganda, and that this guy, the serial rapist himself, has become a master storyteller who duped Biden and Blinken, except that they were completely open and willing to believe anything that would justify the violations of international law that were being perpetrated already by Israel. Meanwhile, the Houthis have turned out to be ferocious, fierce, courageous beyond words. They've been attacking cargo ships in the Red Sea. The U.S. and its allies are forming a naval task force to protect shipping. They want to bring together a host of nations. Meanwhile, Iran warns of tremendous problems if the U.S. were to establish a maritime task force. Iran's defense minister said there's no room in the region for outsiders to maneuver a maritime task force. They definitely should not attempt such a thing. If they do, they will face tremendous problems. Nobody can make a move in a region where we have predominance, but the U.S. has gone ahead, formally organizing, bringing together UK, Bahrain, Canada, France, Italy, Netherlands, Norway, the Seychelles, and Spain. It's not going to matter. The Houthis have declared they won't back down even if the U.S. mobilizes the entire world, and I believe it. Saudi Arabia, by the way, and the United Arab Emirates are divided. The UAE would like an attack to take place on the Houthis in Yemen, but the Saudis, who have just negotiated a peace deal dividing Yemen into a north and a south, but the Saudis would take control of the south where the oil is, the Houthis the north. They've never been concerned or driven by money or financial interests. But where one of the reasons they arrived at a peace deal is because the Houthis demonstrated their ability to attack Saudi Arabian oil refineries, which were to resume could have a catastrophic effect on the West's ability to maintain its economies. Meanwhile, we have ongoing efforts to undermine Trump, the most recent coming from the Colorado Supreme Court with an absurd declaration that, based upon an obscure provision of the 14th Amendment, which declares that those who participate in inciting insurrections against the United States, that's actually the overthrow of the American government, are ineligible to run for federal or hold federal office. But this has been interpreted in the past to apply to Confederate soldiers. It doesn't have contemporary significance. American thinker right off the bat in the wake of January 6th explained that Trump had not committed incitement. He'd actually told his followers to be peaceful and patriotic in protesting what appeared to be the theft of an election, about which he was 100% correct. And there was no insurrection. The parties involved weren't armed. They weren't attempting to overthrow the government. Indeed, it appears to be an FBI operation in collusion with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Simply outrageous. Meanwhile, Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy announced he's withdrawing from the Colorado primary until President Trump is reinstated, challenging DeSantis, Haley, and Christie to do the same. This is simply an excellent move by Ramaswamy. The case has no merit whatsoever. Just to give an historical illustration, 51 Confederate soldiers were elected to Congress 6 years after the adoption of the 14th Amendment. Here's the Babylon Bee captures the spirit exactly. Colorado saved democracy by not allowing people to vote for their preferred candidate. Denver, in an heroic effort to save American democracy, the Colorado Supreme Court has voted to prevent residents of Colorado from voting for their preferred candidate. I love democracy, and this is why we had to vote to overrule the millions of Colorado citizens who want to elect Trump through the democratic process, said Colorado Justice and white woman Melissa Hart after the vote. Trump is a terrifying orange man, And if he's elected, he'll likely grow to over 50 feet and rampage through the country, killing people with his laser eyes. Our democracy is too precious to allow that to happen. Meanwhile, Reagan's Attorney General, Ed Meese, has submitted an amicus brief to the Supreme Court that Jack Smith, this rogue special prosecutor, has been going after Trump hammer and tongs, was not properly appointed and therefore has no legal authority to prosecute President Trump. This is a very significant development. Meese, who served under Ronald Reagan, argued the appointment was illegal, that Biden's Attorney General Merrick Garland was not authorized by law to appoint a private citizen like Smith with the sweeping prosecutorial power he's been given. As such, his current petition for the Supreme Court to fast-track Trump's January 6 immunity claims should be ignored. Indeed, all of his efforts are invalid if Meese's argument is correct, and it appears to me that it is. In an amicus brief that runs over 30 pages, he makes the following key points. All federal offices not listed in the Constitution must be created by Congress, and Congress has not created any position like the one Smith currently holds. He's a private citizen, but he's been given the power of a full-fledged U.S. attorney. The law does permit special counsels in limited roles as assistants, but not with the sweeping authority Smith has received, equal to or even exceeding that of a Senate-confirmed U.S. attorney. A position similar to Smith, called an independent counsel, previously existed, but the authorizing statute expired in 1999. Even if his position were lawful, he was not lawfully appointed. Smith observes, Meese notes Smith does not answer to Garland. In fact, Garland specifically said so to instill confidence Smith's probe was independent. As such, Meese notes, Smith counts as a superior officer. He is prosecuting a former president, the first time that's happened in our nation's history. Smith is purporting to exercise at least as much power as a U.S. attorney and arguably more. That is the hallmark of a superior officer who must be appointed as such. To wit, he has to be nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate to lawfully hold his position. Meese thus likens Smith to the proverbial emperor with no clothes. Not clothed in the authority of the federal government, Smith is a modern example of the naked emperor. Improperly appointed, he has no more authority to represent the United States in this court than Bryce Harper, Taylor Smith, or Jeff Bezos. That fact is sufficient to sink Smith's petition, and the court should deny review. Meanwhile, a former State Department official warns of a color revolution plot to shut down the 2024 election. Mike Benz, executive director for the Foundation for Freedom Online and a former State Department diplomat, revealed there was a bipartisan plot in 2020 to kick off a color revolution using Black Lives Matter to cause havoc in the streets of America if President Trump had refused to step down from office. The scheme was called the Transition Integrity Project and involved high-level D.C. operatives, including Donna Brazile, the former head of the DNC, and Michael Steele, the former head of the RNC, along with top predators from U.S. national security agencies, the NSA, the DOD, the FBI, and more. Benz warned the same plan will be used in 2024 if Trump wins the election. Very serious stuff. Here's a summary by J.W. Williams, that there's a bipartisan plot in 2020 there was to kick off a color revolution called the Transition Integrity Project. The TIP designed a simulation plan to force Trump out of office. John Podesta played the role of Joe Biden, and a Republican played the role of Trump. Rosa Brooks led the TIP exercises, she having served in the CIA and an official with the Pentagon. Ben says she now teaches courses at Georgetown on how to overthrow governments. Part of the plan was for the western states of California, Oregon, and Washington to secede from the United States to create a new alliance called Cascadia, and said the TIP planned to redefine democracy by declaring the Electoral College vote invalid if Trump had a clear win, and they would have claimed that only the popular vote would be valid. They contemplated rousing tens of thousands of BLM supporters to take to the streets and shut down federal government buildings to make the country ungovernable. This is a clear-cut color revolution tactics, and they bragged about it in a Time magazine article published shortly after the 2020 election. The AFL-CIO and Chamber of Congress were involved. The chamber companies pay union muscle to bust up dictatorships that interfere with their bottom line and profits of blue-chip multinationals, and said this is the game played by the National Endowment for Democracy. Union muscle takes to the street to shut the country down using rent-a-riot destabilization teams. He said the same program is being set up right now for the 2024 election. Let me conclude with the following. Joe Scarborough is declaring why we must have Joe Biden in office. That the world would have spiraled into World War III without Joe Biden's 50 years of experience. Here's what he has said. The crisis we're going through right now, where the world could spiral into World War III, but it's not because of a guy who actually had 50 years of experience. It shows a contrast between a guy obsessed with marketing his brand, a guy obsessed with gestures, a guy governed by gesture versus, well, Joe Biden, who has 50 years of experience. And when a deal goes sideways on the hostages, he can pick up the phone call, get it done. When he meets with President Tsai in a critical meeting, they have experience. They have over a decade of experience working with each other when both were number two in their countries. Experience matters. The contrast, and it makes me so angry when people are saying Biden is out of it. No, he's not. On Joe Biden's worst day, he's light years ahead of Donald Trump on policy, on politics, on diplomacy. Claire McCaskill chimes in. Well, there's no question about that. And frankly, on mental capabilities, you know the ageism thing is really, look the way Donald Trump behaves. Who is more unstable? Who is the one who doesn't know where he's part of the time, doesn't know he's running again, doesn't know what year it is, doesn't know world leaders or what countries they're from? It is really, if you isolate his comments and look at them objectively, he is the one who is suffering from a problem related to declining ability in later life, not Joe Biden. Scarborough. Yeah. And after that screed, there would be a lot of people going, Uncle Don, he needs to maybe go to a community living center. He's out of it. Mika Brzezinski. He's got a couple of emotional problems, emotional regulation. Scarborough, poor thing. But the fact is, we don't have Joe Biden in office. We have some kind of imitation, some imposter. He's even wearing a latex mask. Go to my blog if you want to see. You don't have 50 years of experience. You have a nobody who's playing a script and wearing a mask. The title, Fake President. Joe Biden clone. Clones, doubles, actors. Transvestites hiding in plain sight, holographic or CGI. I lay out the evidence. They not only have different shape and size of skull, they have different signatures, they have different manners of speech. it appears that the real Joe died in 2017 or 2018. Stunning stuff. Let me add that this past weekend, I conducted my 4th annual False Flags and Conspiracies virtual conference. The response has been sensational. I'm getting all kinds of rave reports. All Saturday sessions are already available at BitChute channel Jim Fetzer. Sundays will be up this week. The very last presentation is striking in regard to Biden by Dr. Catherine Horton, because she has led the legal fight against targeting individuals with electromagnetic devices, which are not only extremely painful, even disabling, but whereby remote control they can affect your behavior. She talked about implantation of electrodes in brains. And I believe that's what we have with Joe Biden. Not only is it not the guy from Delaware, but it appears to be some kind of chipped up robotic-like entity. I offer as an illustration. We recently had a video of Biden walking across the lawn to Air Force One, the helicopter, waiting for him. I noticed his back was absolutely straight and rigid. Joe Biden's an old guy. He sort of leans over. His back is not absolutely straight and rigid. Moreover, the way he was walking was utterly mechanical. It was more artificial and robotic than 3CPO, who has a greater degree of interactive expression and, as it were, humanity than this robot walking across the lawn. So not only is Scarborough making absurd comments and suggesting that Biden is, in better shape than Trump and alluding to 50 years of experience, he has to know better. There's no way that Joe Scarborough and Claire McCaskill and Mia Zabrinsky do not know. This is not the real Joe. This is some imposter. There may be more than one, but it's part and parcel of an elaborate fraud being perpetrated on the American people by the Democrat Party, who really need to rename themselves as a totalitarian party because they frankly don't give a damn about democracy. Everything they're doing is just to retain control of the government, where they are in the process of destroying America with their open border policy, by not enforcing the law, by in effect legalizing shoplifting up to 950, turning urban centers into wastelands, attempting to take guns away from the American people that are becoming more and more important to defend ourselves, because as the miscreants spread out from the urban areas, having exploited them for their resources, they're going to come to the suburbs. And because of absurdities like their political slogan, defund the police, which may be the dumbest platform in the history of American politics, Americans understand what they're up against. They need to take measures to protect themselves, because when push comes to shove, when they start knocking on your door, if you can't protect yourself, there's going to be no one else there to do it. I encourage everyone to check out my Volkswagen Conspiracy Conference. It's also available in part on my Twitter account. But I say go to BitChute channel Jim Fetzer and check it out. You'll be glad you did.
Thank you, as always, Jim. Very interesting observations. It's, to say the least, some sad reports and a lot of, what can I say? If any of these reports are true, it's very, we got a lot of work to do, it looks like. But your reports and observations are always amazing, and we always love to hear what you have to say. Do you have any predictions for 2024 and what you would like to see happen for 2024?
Well, the question becomes whether Israel is going to attempt to execute the Samson option, because we've had a succession of PMs from Israel who declared that if Israel were to be going down to be destroyed, they'd take the rest of the world with them. They've used diplomatic cover to transport nuclear weapons into all the capitals of Europe and all the major cities of the United States. Israel is losing the war. Hezbollah is entering. Israel has already resorted to the use of nuclear weapons, in particular neutron bombs, which kill people but preserve structures in Lebanon and in Gaza, as Christopher Busby, an internationally recognized expert whom I have myself personally interviewed in the past, has ascertained. This means there are no limits to the breaches of human law and mutual respect the Israelis will not commit. I have no doubt the Ukraine war is lost. Putin is going to partition it. After all, Ukraine was an artificial construct. He's going to give parts back to the nations I recognize: Romania, Poland, Belarus. He's going to keep a significant portion, the Donbass, Odessa, the Crimea, for Russia. But this was never a war of aggression. This was a war of national defense, for which Putin ought to be internationally celebrated. Politically, Biden is losing more and more support. In my opinion, he won't be on the ticket in 2024. The Democrat Party is going to sub in Gavin Newsom, and I suspect Michelle Obama running with him when Biden withdraws from the race and may pardon Hunter and even himself in the process, where Trump is posed for a dramatic victory. He knows what to do to set the ship of state aright, but I won't be surprised if they attempt to pull the kind of color revolution that I've outlined here. It's that bad. You might say it's a Democrats' version of the Israeli Samson option. If they can't control the country, they're going to take the country down with them. I wish I could offer more positive reports on our expectations, but let me say, by way of closing, spend all that time you can with your family, your friends, and people you love and care about. We literally do not know how much time we have left. Best wishes for a wonderful Christmas and holiday season. May it turn out at 2024 is a better year for Americans and the world than has been 2023.
Amen to that, Jim. You said it best. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas. Take it easy. Stay tuned. And we'll see you all next year.
You got it, my friend. Thanks for this and all your other efforts.
Thank you. Take care.